Hello, everybody. This is Natasha Halfer Parker from Symmetry Solutions. I am joined with Jennifer White, also from Symmetry Solutions. We are here to offer our little kind of typical Friday strategies piece where we try to share some thoughts or research or some things that we've come across that might be helpful to the audience. I know that we've gotten a lot of questions around COVID and mental health concerns. And there's been some really good research that just came out where they've been doing a pretty good job around the world of, interviewing people and seeing if there's patterns. And what I like about this research is it's pretty international. It's not just here in the United States. But before we go forward, I just want to say briefly, I'm just going to mention that just want to start off by saying Black Lives Matter. As usual, this week, unfortunately, there's been a lot of news in regards to some very unfortunate issues that continue to happen in our country. I will name Jacob Blake, even though I know it's one of many types of situations. And what's even more sad is that even if we wanted to name everybody, we probably couldn't. So I just want to note that it's an ongoing concern and travesty that's happening, and we need to continue to be aware and keep it at the forefront so that we can start seeing systemic changes that we really need to all be very concerned about. All right, so given that, basically it was the Greater Good magazine posted 7 ways the pandemic is affecting our mental health. We will post that article in the feedback and the link. We'll share the link in the comments thread, sorry. But we're gonna go over kind of what the 7 things are that they found. So Jen, do you wanna start with number 1?
Yeah. Number 1 is we're anxious, depressed, and traumatized. And so kind of normalizing the feelings that we're all dealing with. I mean, some of us might be more isolated. And that tends to bring depression. Not knowing exactly what's going to happen is going to bring anxiety. So yeah, a lot of people are doing this. I feel dealing with these same feelings. And so I like to normalize that, and then also realize that there is help out there to help you with this.
Yeah, and in particular, the symptoms that they were talking about were stress, anxiety, depression, and PTSD. So those were all showed as worsening mental health problems than before the pandemic. And this is a big study. It's actually like a half a dozen studies that they kind of conglomerated the research, but it covers like over 10,000 respondents. So anyway, that's some of what's happening there. And we have to understand too that anytime we have poor mental health, that usually affects things like our sleep. And I think that's something that, when you're worried and anxious, it's hard to fall asleep or stay asleep. And so that's another thing that you might be experiencing is some insomnia. The number 2 thing that they found is that some of us are lonely. It seems to also make common sense. We've been isolating, we've been quarantining, we've been not able to maybe engage with certain family members or our work colleagues. So we are, fairly isolated in ways that I think most of us have had unprecedented, in the past. Even introverted people that I see are telling me I'm a little kind of done with my need for introversion. So it's interesting. But the positive aspect of this bullet point is that they said not everybody is feeling more lonely. There is kind of this sense that some people feel like we're in this together, and kind of a sense of group camaraderie with their country or their community, or with kind of the world at large. So some people are feeling that kind of connection with other human beings, and a lot of people are doing more intentional aspects of their relationships. They're video chatting, they're phone calling in ways that maybe they didn't before. Like they're like having the time and energy to get a group that maybe they haven't talked to their friends in a while, and they're feeling connected that way. So it's not necessarily that everybody is feeling lonely, and there's definitely ways to help with that.
Yeah, well, in fact, I mean, I've been kind of using it as an excuse to kind of reach out to my friends. I normally don't make time for, not that I may want to make time for them, but wasn't thinking about it before. And now I'm trying to be more intentional of that. Or like this last week, reaching out to one of my closest friends. I'm like, I'm feeling a bit lonely. Like, and there was just room for that. And it was nice. It was
Yeah.
refreshing and it helped. So yeah. Um, the next one actually is domestic violence has increased, and it really has. This is something to be aware of. Imagine you're already in a bad situation, stresses are worse, anger is going to be coming out more. And then if you're, depending on where you live, I mean, and what the rules are, um, so the social isolating is going to be a lot harder in this, and going to make it a lot harder for victims to be getting the help. And I've definitely seen that this has increased and has been harder for people. There are resources, but uh,
And maybe
even if
we'll make sure to post a resource for domestic violence. A link is for that as well.
yes, for sure. Yeah. And I think it's important for all of us to be aware of and to keep kind of your eye out to know that so that you can be a help to those that are dealing with this.
Mhm. The effects depend on your personality, lifestyle, and demographics. So let's think about some of the things that would fall under that. So although older people tend to be more at risk, or people with health concerns tend to be more at risk, it seems like younger people are actually the ones that are struggling more emotionally. There's not really necessarily a reason for that we are for sure, but there's speculation, right? So maybe younger people have higher expectations of being able to go out and be social or have, outside activities, whereas older people maybe are already comfortable being at home. And so just kind of thinking about age is one. As far as women also tend to be slightly more vulnerable. Again, speculations are that burdens like caregiving or the risk of losing jobs or childcare tend to fall more heavily on women. And those kinds of expectations have been more definitely at play with stay-at-home schooling and, all the many kind of ways that maybe they didn't have to deal with those kinds of things before. College students have had to adjust to online schooling instead of maybe having the typical college experience that they were excited to have. And it also depends on your personality and your ability to be resilient, right? So if we're already kind of sensitive or have a concern with rumination, or that we tend to be empaths even, can struggle a little bit more when they see so much difficulty and struggle throughout the world. Whereas there can be personalities that lean a slightly more resilient. So thinking about resilience can be a helpful thing to consider.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And number five is that it's worse for disadvantaged groups. So, for example, people that have poor health or dealing with chronic disease that are more at risk. This is, of course, going to affect their stress and their anxiety levels more. Yeah, I know even with my health issues, it's brought on anxiety that I've been dealing with. And another thing here, I mean, there's all types of privilege, and also like your income, whether you have a job that you can work from home or not, how stable that is. And money is a huge concern right now. The economy has been affected, and um, yeah, it's completely understandable for that to be affecting people.
Yeah, and that's also access to healthcare, access to
Yes.
mental health, just a lot of I know first responders that have to do with like being in stores and restaurants and all those kinds of things. I guess not first responders. What's the term I'm trying to think? Not primary. What's the word, Jen? Help
I
me
don't
out.
know. I don't know. Oh,
Essential workers.
oh
Goodness.
yes, yes.
Sorry. Essential workers oftentimes don't necessarily fall in a high level income bracket. So they're
Yes.
feeling like they have to go back to school. And I know a lot of teachers have felt a lot of conflicts about
Oh, yeah.
taking the risk to go back to school versus not, depending on their situation and how much of a risk they're taking with their own health. So Resources, we're not all in the same boat when it comes to the resources that we have. And so that takes a higher toll on people who are disadvantaged, which goes right into, of course, the next one, which are that these effects are compounded by racism, right? So part of systemic racism is that it affects who lives and who dies. Black people are more likely to be infected, less likely to be tested and treated, and less likely to survive if they get COVID. So that's really, I mean, that's significant. So the Black community is confronting this pandemic with worse health, less access to care, and more distrust of the medical system, just due to a lot of historical systemic racism as well. So, and then not to mention, of course, that we've had, you know, this uproar in regards to the protests for racial justice, Black Lives Matter, which is, of course, a positive thing in one regard, in the sense that we are bringing a lot of energy to this problem as a nation, and we are bringing a lot of confrontation, and yet that whole process is exhausting. It's exhausting to Black people to have to, you know, hear the news, consistently see their own people dying or being harmed in these violent ways that we know are affected by systemic racial issues. So it's just those kinds of things we know affect mental health, and anything that affects mental health affects physical health. So these are the ways that you know, Black and brown people in our community are just more vulnerable and are higher risk. So, because other people of color are also suffering disproportionately, Latinos are also having issues with all of these statistics.
And I just wanted to repeat, because this cannot be said enough, Black Lives Matter. I just think we need to say that more. And yeah, of course, this is affecting people of different races differently, particularly the Black community. And it's just important that we're aware of that with everything that's going on. So just second that.
And in case anybody struggles with that statement, I always want to educate a little bit that, you know, when people say Black Lives Matter, it doesn't mean that there's an inequality of lives mattering. Like all lives matter, obviously. What it means,
Black lives do matter.
Yeah, Black lives are having a much harder time than other lives, right? And so when there's a community in need, you don't talk about all the communities, you talk about the community in need. So that's what Black Lives Matter means, and why it's so important to vocalize it, so that we can all understand that we're all in agreement, because it's all very clear that these that this is the state of our situation. Okay, you want to talk about numbers?
Yeah, your work situation matters. So a lot of people are going to be experiencing this very differently. I mean, of course, you know, this is going to be stressful for doctors and nurses. Not everyone can work from home. Some people aren't able to work right now, and the stresses that brings. You know, it's already mentioned the people that, I mean, the essential workers that have to work. And that can be very hard when you're not getting, especially when you're not getting paid very much to work at a grocery store, you know. There's a lot of stress situations. Not every, like, I feel I'm very blessed to be able to work from home. And that is privilege there, right there. So I'm just acknowledging that.
So given that, that's kind of the state of affairs. That's what we're dealing with. What can we do about it? What is in our control? A lot of this is not in our control, right? And we know that as people, when we don't feel in control, we can go a little wonky, meaning that we can find different ways, both healthy and unhealthy, to deal with this type of distress. So let's talk about some of their suggestions. One of the things that they found is that people who were using large amounts of social media were more fearful. So part of that might be because it's all over the news, it's all over social media. So it's not like you're getting a balanced view of lots of different issues that are happening around the world. When something like a pandemic is happening, that's all you see. So as you're scrolling, and hitting on things, and especially if you're anxious about this topic already and you're wanting more information, it's like it's almost information overload. So they do kind of give the suggestion of maybe putting some limits on your social media time, or maybe the type of social media, right? So that it's you make sure to diversify and not just be looking at COVID. Like kittens are good for your mental health, right? So look at some pictures of kittens and puppies or whatever it is that brings you joy in your life. But I don't. Another thing that they're talking about is information. So even though they're saying put some limits on how you use social media, Jen, do you want to talk a little bit about how information can actually be very helpful?
Oh yeah. Well, and for me, like when I'm having anxiety or worrying about something, getting good information really helps like me manage that. And um, so for me, what helps is really finding out what Dr. Anthony Fauci is saying. This is someone that's he's worked for 6 different presidents. He's played a big role. He has experience. He's the one I can trust. And again, maybe not for everyone, but for me, his style of not sugarcoating anything and just telling us, I feel like I can trust that he's not lying to us, that he's going to tell me the truth, that it's not going to just be like, oh, it's no big deal, but give me some helpful suggestions. And I just feel it's interesting. I feel so much calmer after hearing him speak. So for me, that's something I definitely go to. And I think all of us should kind of look at that. Like, how are you feeling after you listen to maybe different sources? And of course, it's important that, are they science-based? Is there research behind it? Sources really
Yeah,
do
that
matter.
you're able to trust the sources, right? Which,
Yeah.
of course, there can be a lot of misinformation out there, and so I think trusted sources are experts in the field, people who've been at it for a long period of time, people who have a group group consensus, right? Not just kind of individual ideas here or there. So where group expertise really matters. So those are kind of the types of things to be looking for.
For sure. One other comment about social media. It, it's interesting. Like, yes, it would be horrible to like be on Facebook all day. Like that probably would not help your mental health. But I also like to look at the positive things of really everything. But like social media has a lot of positives. I don't think I would be dealing with this as well without social media. I mean, how often is like Facebook Messenger a good way to connect with people and like the technology that we have today and being able to still meet with people through Zoom and through all this technology, if we use it in positive ways, can help us so much and help us from being lonely. So I'm grateful for that.
Absolutely. And as well as a lot of these trusted sources that we're talking about have social media outlets, and information too that you can tap into very easily. So getting information is easier than ever. You just have to make sure you're getting the right information. So
not too much.
Yeah.
Like not 7 hours worth of news, maybe just an hour or two.
Well, and they actually said here, like it's 3 hours or more a day focusing on COVID really raised people's anxiety. So that's kind of a good barometer. If you want to spend 45 minutes to an hour, that's different than 3 hours. So they also found in a study in China that practicing basic safety and hygiene would help your mental health. So again, this is something where you feel like you're in control. You put on your mask, you feel like you're in control. You wash your hands, you feel like you're in control, right? You put on anti-disinfectant, you avoid sharing utensils with other people. All those kinds of things help you feel like there's something you can actually do to not necessarily lower risk 100%, but definitely lower risk significantly. And so it makes you feel like there's something doable and in your control. So that would help people experience less depression, anxiety, stress, and PTSD. I think that, do you want to talk a little bit about just trying to keep a normal routine as much as possible?
Yeah. Well, for sure, as humans, we do need routine, and it does help us. And the more we can just have that look like our normal lives, it's definitely not easy to wake up as early, maybe, but actually, we do better the more that is consistent. And that may know we're not all morning people, so it doesn't have to be early. But having that, still making time, like I know even times where I've been out of a job, it was so easy to like forget to eat lunch at lunchtime. And in order, like getting that consistency of like lunch and dinner at the same time, um, really helps me,
Yeah,
and it's important.
even simple things. Like it was fun for a while there for all of us to wear our pajamas and
Yes.
not shower. And yet things like that can really help you feel like you've got purpose to your day, you know, get up, take a shower, make your bed. Just simple little things can really help you feel like life is normalized instead of like this ongoing vacation that vacations are good for
Yes.
about 2 weeks, but after that, I'm not so sure.
Yes. Well, yeah, yeah. And it's amazing how much a good shower make you feel, and how much then that makes you feel more motivated to do stuff. Once you kind of have that routine, you kind of get more done.
Yeah,
I'm all for, though, I think I should like want to just keep on wearing sweats.
that's right. Well,
That's what I don't want to change.
a lot of us who are working from home have a different attire, you know, it's like
Yes.
professional attire from the waist up and then not so professional from the waist down.
I'm starting to think it looks normal. So when I start going back to work, I need to make sure. Yeah.
So I think the last thing is something that we as therapists talk a lot about is sometimes there's just it's not about doing something or controlling something, it's about acceptance, you know. And I think that we can just, you know, settle into this space where you allow yourself to just feel some of these feelings, you know, that it is harder right now, that we are more stressed out, that and that's okay, that feeling bad is part of being a human being. And right now we're dealing with you know, I hate to say the word because I've heard it so many times, but unprecedented, right? It's an unprecedented time, and there's real wisdom in that word because it's not something that we've seen role modeled. It's not something that we've been through before. It's not something that we have a lot of understanding about what it's going to look like in the future. So there's some normalcy in some of these feelings. Sometimes I think we think stress, anxiety, depression, oh, bad, we need to avoid. Sometimes those feelings are there for perfectly valid reasons, right? And so I think acceptance um, is part of the game too. So I think those
Yes.
are our best wisdom, which comes from all of this research from people who are out there gathering all this information, which is so useful. 7 things that you should probably be aware of in regards to effects that we're having on our mental health, and some ideas on how to mitigate that as much as possible. Any closing thoughts, Jen?
Just that last point, I think, is so important. Allowing us to feel whatever we're feeling. Sometimes we try so hard not to feel anything negative, but it's actually easier to work through the emotion if we just let ourselves feel it and go through it, and yeah, and learn from it and normalize it.
Yeah, yeah. And we are an online practice. We're Symmetry Solutions. We offer both wellness coaching, which has to do with life transitions and shifts and changes, which kind of fits right into this. We also offer mental health services if you are in one of the states that we practice. And we'll make sure we have a link to our services and our website in case you're interested in reaching out to us for support. We're also always more than happy to offer referrals, right, for people who maybe we're not a good fit, but they need some ideas of where to go. So either way, make sure you check us out. And we're so glad to have spent this time with you today. Have a good day, Jen.
You too. Thanks.
Bye.